Pleased to present Austin Faith Dialogue, brought to you by the Austin Metropolitan Ministries. In the weeks ahead, you will see these and other programs by various denominations. Austin Faith Dialogue, a public affairs program at the crossroads of religion and life, a series highlighting the cultural and social interaction between the worshiping and religious communities in and around the capital city. Austin Faith Dialogue is brought to you by the Austin Metropolitan Ministries in cooperation with KTVC. Join us now in Austin Faith Dialogue.
'Tis the season to be jolly, or so goes the Christmas carol. From various beliefs and traditions people celebrate in the winter time. Hello, I'm Valerie Bridgman Davis, pastor of Bernard Full Community Church, and your host for today's edition of Austin Faith Dialogue. Today we have gathered a panel of men representing three different traditions. Rick Goldberg, a businessman and member of the board of directors of the Austin Jewish Federation, will speak concerning the Jewish celebration of Hanukkah and what it's like to be Jewish in a historically Christian season. Kwesi Evans, who's a publisher and editor of a neighborhood newspaper, Nakoa, will explain Kwanzaa, a celebration of African origins observed in this country by African Americans. And Bruce Murray, an insurance agent and member of First Baptist Church, will address the Christian perspective of a religious holiday gone secular. Welcome to you all. I'm really glad that all three of you have agreed to be here, and we've already had some lively discussions, and I'm looking forward to them continuing. Since most people know what Jews are and what Christians are, let's start with Kwanzaa. Kwesi, could you talk a little bit about what Kwanzaa is and how it got started?
Kwanzaa is a basically African-American celebration that began back in 1966 by Dr. Malawi Karinga. Dr. Karinga had visited Africa and noticed celebrations there of different ceremonies, particularly the ceremony of the harvest feast, the first fruits as they called them. And he recalled as a scholar that African Americans celebrated all and a variety of holidays from other cultures, but none of their own. We had no celebration that was distinctively African or African American in its nature. So he created Kwanzaa based on what is called an Nguzo Saba, that is a black value system, wherein we celebrate 7 days, 7 different principles of the black value system.
And when are the 7 days?
Kwanzaa begins on December the 26th, ends on January the 1st. Each day we celebrate a separate principle.
Okay, tell us what the principles are quickly.
On the first day we celebrate Umoja, which is unity. The second day, Kujichagulia, self-determination. They all have Swahili names. The third day, Ujima, collective work and responsibility. The fourth day, Ujamaa, cooperative economics. The fifth day, Nia, our purpose. The sixth day, Kuumba, the creativity that we have. And on the seventh day, which is January the 1st, we celebrate Imani, the faith that will carry us through the next year.
Okay, and it's on the 7th day that you give gifts, or adults give gifts to children.
Only to children. We give what is called the Zawadi, which is Swahili for the gifts. We don't want to be like the secularized Christian tradition where you go out and buy gifts to buy love from someone. We give gifts to children on the basis of them being good, not just because they're children. It is to inspire, which is to say we acknowledge the goodness of you in this past year. We want to abhor you to be better in the coming year. And that's the only basis for gift giving. What we give throughout the tradition is love to one another.
And Rick, would you talk a little bit about Hanukkah and what it is? And it just happens to fall around the same time that Advent is, so, or Advent happens to fall around the time Hanukkah is, whichever way it goes.
Well, Hanukkah probably predates the Christian tradition, but Hanukkah is a celebration of a military victory by the Jews over the Hasmonean Greeks. It comes at a different time according to our solar calendar every year. because the Jewish calendar is a lunar calendar. So every year it's on a different day. It's basically a celebration of our tribe of a victory, however temporary, because the Greeks established a hegemony over most of the known world at that time. And there was a period of time when the Greeks were trying to Hellenize the Jews in that area of the world which is today called Israel. And they pushed certain sects of Jews a little bit too far, and they staged what was basically a guerrilla rebellion against the Greeks, and they won and managed to rule their own destiny in a self-deterministic sort of a way for several decades before the Greeks came down hard on them again.
And I think you said to me that it is primarily an in-house affair, I mean a family affair celebration, rather than a corporate, say, worship celebration.
Well, it's a celebration that's done in the home. It's not typically a celebration which is done in the synagogue or in the temple or in the Orthodox shul. It's done in people's homes. It's a family celebration. All Jewish celebrations, and to one extent or another, are corporate celebrations in that we all do this together, and we're very well aware of what we do together. For example, one little tradition in my family is that we have a Hanukkah party every year on one of the days of Hanukkah. And there's certain traditional foods that we eat. There's a candelabra that's lit in a certain way, which we know Jewish families all over the world are doing at the same time. And I don't know, we invite 30 or 40 people there. So there is a corporate aspect to it because, as I've mentioned, it's a celebration of a military victory of our outfit, and we're proud of that.
Okay. And Bruce, talk a little bit about Christmas.
Well, Christmas is basically religious holiday that has become secularized, as you said, to kind of run amok in our world. For those of us who are believers in Jesus Christ as the only Son of God, it is the celebration of the birth of Jesus Christ in Bethlehem. And we practice that within the Christian church. It is celebrated as that, and then we have to contend with trying to explain to the rest of the world what they're doing and explaining it to it. And I think for many of us as Christians, the celebration that has come about of Christmas is almost gotten to the point where it's somewhat offensive, in that people have taken a religious holiday and something that means a great deal to many of us as Christians and totally and completely secularized it and blown it out beyond anything that it was ever intended to be. I think it is intended, and as the tradition began, it was intended to be just that, a celebration of the birth of Christ. And we try to do it in the church, but try to do it in the home and make it a family affair. Depending upon what Christian faith you're a part of and where you live has a great deal to do with how the celebration of Christmas is within the Christian faith. We all know from the malls and the stores and everything else that goes on how the Christian faith is celebrated by the world.
Now, here we go. Let's do it this way. I think I'm going to start by asking you to, because you don't come out of a vacuum. None of you come out of a vacuum. You have history. So let's start with your history before we get into what it's like to be Jewish in the midst of a Christian celebration, or to be celebrating Kwanzaa after Christmas. Start by where did you come from along the faith tradition, your own faith? Start with you, Crazy, just because I started with you a while ago.
I celebrate the ancient African religions, ancient Egyptology, which...
But you haven't done that all your life?
No, of course not. I grew up in a traditional Christian home. I went to Bible school and church from the 6 years old up until my early 20s. I had a scholarship to become a minister in the Christian faith, and I chose not to because I didn't think I was ready at the time. But I also wanted to seek more knowledge beyond what was given to me in the King James Version of what was called the Bible. And as I studied the Hebrew Bible, the Quran, and the Book of the Dead and other ancient Egyptian religions, I learned that just because of history, the ancient Egyptians had a religion that was organized 4,000 years before there was Christianity, before there was Judaism. And if these people were worshiping a god, then I said, to myself, why not worship the original God rather than a later version? And I have found myself serene and comfortable with the creator of all of us, which accepts all of us. In the ancient Egyptian religion, it accepts Judaism, it accepts Christianity, it accepts Islam, it accepts whatever you want to believe, because we know there's one God.
Okay. I don't want you to get too far gone on that. Okay. Rick?
Can't preach.
Well, I mean,
I know it's tempting to preach for all y'all.
I was born and grew up in Texas as a Jew, and that's an experience in and of itself.
I'm sure.
Different than growing up in Israel or in New York. I was born in Dallas and grew up in Houston, and there's always a sense of being different. And I grew up as a conservative Jew and went to Hebrew school and learned some of these things, and then spent a number of years rejecting all of that, rebelling against it. And then basically because I come from a family in which Jewish activism is practiced, I found myself again in that sense. Not swallowing it all whole, but in selecting, and this is a time-honored Jewish tradition, selecting that which resonates with me and my thoughts, and rejecting in a very peaceful sort of a way those things that don't. To exist as a Jew, to grow up as a Jew in Texas, you're aware of the fact that you're different, and the issue is, how do you deal with that? Do you let the dissonance be a creative one or a destructive one?
Okay, we're going to come back to that. Bruce?
I grew up in a non-Christian home and became a born-again believer in my early 20s, and for 27 years was a minister, 14 of that here in Austin, before I left the ministry to enter the business world. And but I haven't left my faith. Some people thought when I left the ministry to go into the business world that I left my faith. I haven't left my faith. I'm a very active member of First Baptist Church and still believe the same things that I did when I went to seminary. But was not rooted and grounded in the Christian faith. I came to it in my own way.
All right, so you all come from different backgrounds. Now, I'm going to let you finish where you started, Rick, on the dissonance of growing up Jewish in Texas, and particularly as it relates to being Jewish during the Christmas holiday.
Well, there's a Hebrew term called galut, and what it basically means is exile. And that can have a positive or a negative connotation. You can either feel like an outsider who really doesn't fit in, and you're into self-abnegation and all the rest of it, and quite frankly, I know a lot of people who are not comfortable with the fact that they're different. On the other hand, that difference can be a source of strength also, especially if you're in touch with where you come from and feel comfortable with it, and knowledgeable about it and feel comfortable with it. So that's the way I turn it. I just put a little bit different spin on exactly the same thing, and use the fact that my tradition goes back a long ways. It's full of a custom and ceremony and value, which is different in very many substantial ways from any other religious tradition. And I really feel at home there. And as a result, I have my armor, if you want to use it in that sense, when Christmas time comes around.
You have an 11-year-old daughter.
Yes, I do.
Talk about having an 11-year-old daughter in the midst of Christmas time.
Well, she's an item unto herself. She's intelligent. She knows she's different, and she knows why she's different, and she knows why she's Jewish. And as a result, she separates herself in some very important ways psychologically, I think, from the other kids who may be celebrating Christmas. But it's not an issue for her because, in a major psychological sense, because we've trained her that she's different. And just like people are different in all different kinds of ways, doesn't mean one is better than the other. She knows she lives in a country where most of the people here are Christians and celebrate Christmas. Even if they're not Christians, they may celebrate Christmas. And she knows she doesn't. She celebrates other holidays and has other values. So I'm trying to teach her to, as I've done, gain strength from her difference rather than self-ambivalence.
And Akwesi, the question came up whether Kwanzaa, when we were talking earlier, the four of us, whether Kwanzaa was a reaction to Christmas, and your response?
My response was only in small part, not in large part. Kwanzaa was initiated because we needed something that we created for ourselves. We created so much for others, we needed to do something for ourselves. But in recognition that Christmas existed and most African Americans celebrated Christmas, Dr. Karinga designed Kwanzaa to begin the day after. And it goes from the 26th through the 1st. And it ties in so that you can see the difference. You can see that in one, people celebrate the malls, and in the other, they celebrate a value system where you learn about unifying, being determined, working together, cooperating, realizing that you have a purpose, knowing that you are creative, and knowing that you are a part of a real God. That value system is designed to be different than Christmas, but not to compete with it. Our people can celebrate Christmas, Hanukkah, and Kwanzaa, as far as we're concerned, and we'd be happy with all celebrations. That's the beauty of our ancient Egyptian and African religion, is that we don't deny other people's existence, we acknowledge it. It's just that we have been left out, and our existence has been denied. And we're outsiders who are inside, who accept and believe and serve in other people's holidays, and we make our contribution, we get punished. So this was the opportunity for us to reward ourselves for our contribution rather than being punished by others for what we've given to the society.
Okay. Now, Bruce, I recognize, and I'll give you this out, I recognize that in large part you've just been put on the defensive because you happen to be the Christian in this bunch, along with me. But talk about the secularization of it, your own concerns that Christmas really isn't the Mass of Christ. You were talking earlier, as much as it is a kind of commercialized.
Yeah, the whole church is put on the defensive about it. They don't put me on the defensive. The world puts me on the defensive.
Right.
Because I respect them, Rick and Kwanzaa, because they say we don't have to be like the rest of the world. And this is what the rest of the world has done with Christianity. We've done with Christmas. They say everybody's got to be the same, so everybody's got to celebrate Christmas. You go and start stopping people in the mall, and how many of those people in the mall really recognize what the true meaning of Christmas is in the Christian context of it? And so they put the whole church, and the church is put on the defensive of doing that, of not only teaching the children in the church and the people in the church what Christmas is really all about, but trying to educate a world that's run amok and made a mockery in a real sense out of what should be a very special religious day to Christian people. And if you put theology aside from it, we are tied to our beliefs, and we ought to be respectful of our beliefs to hold to those, not just to adopt something because that's what everybody else has done. And that's what we've done with Christmas. I suppose I'd be the first one if they decided not to have the Christmas holidays in schools. I probably would protest with everybody else because it's become such a tradition to do that. But I think that we ought to be respectful of many things. We ought to be respectful of Rosh Hashanah when it comes at that time. And we had that discussion before about the school system.
Which I was going to say, let's jump to that discussion, because you were saying that if we said we're not going to celebrate Christmas, and I mean we're not going to have off or whatever Christmas during school year, and yet there are some high holy days, I'm using, that's my terminology here, in Judaism.
Also mine.
Okay, I'm using mine because I don't know what you would say, but okay, like Rosh Hashanah, like Yom Kippur, which is kind of insensitive toward, or just totally ignorant of, or I mean, what is it?
Well, sometimes there are events that are scheduled on those days, and we feel, obviously, that a little bit more sensitivity could be exercised. It's not difficult to find out which days in a given year that our main holidays fall on, and the idea would be not to schedule any kind of AISD or other school district events on those days. But invariably there are things that are scheduled then. But again, I would say that we understand. I mean, we're not happy with that. But, and this is the Zionist speaking in me. I mean, we understand we're living in the United States. We're not living in Israel. If we want to be in a place where everyone celebrates Rosh Hashanah together, and there's no question about any of this, we can move to Israel. If we choose to live here, and this is, again, my point of view, I'm not representing anyone else's point of view by this. We live here, and we understand that we're in a majority Christian culture. But all we ask for, I think, is a certain amount of sensitivity towards our most important holidays. And usually people are pretty understanding about that. Sometimes they forget, and we remind them and so on. But
now, you had some strong feelings about this too, Akwesi, about celebrations that are primarily ignored?
Well, African Americans, without any doubt, have made a major contribution to the United States of America. And in all our history here, until we had Kwanzaa, there was no African American holiday that was celebrated, period. Now we have Kwanzaa, which is not recognized by any institution, our state, except for us as a people, as a nation, but we have Martin Luther King's birthday. And I coordinate the MLK activities in Austin half of the last 6 years. I have wanted for the last 6 years to get a high school band to march with us in the parade. But they schedule a school day if it's a weekday. So we cannot get the kids to learn about Dr. King, participate in a positive march where all people come out from every ethnic culture together in unity. Our institutions will not allow the people who work therein and attend therein, the students, to participate. We can't continue to accept being left out of everything. African Americans have been here as long as any other people, made as much a contribution as any other people, and have been given less for their contribution. We have to begin to recognize ourselves, and as I tell people on Martin Luther King Day, don't ask for the 15th, take the 15th. And as a coordinator, we always do it on his birthday, the 15th, regardless of what Monday they schedule it on. We have to begin to exercise that kind of power to let people know that we are a force to be reckoned with, a positive force, a righteous force. But if we don't get respect, if we don't demand respect, no one will give it to us. We have to respect ourselves and insist that others respect our culture. Then we can share in the harmony of this pot we haven't been allowed to melt into yet.
Do either one of y'all want to respond to what Akwesi has just said? I see you both kind of going.
Well, it resonates. I mean, Martin Luther King was not only a great black leader, he was a great leader. And this is a tough place, the United States. It's really an anomaly when you think about it. There are very few places in this world or in the history of this world that are as heterogeneous as the United States. And it's very difficult to satisfy the comings and goings of every group, and I understand that.
Right.
But you still have, that doesn't excuse you as an official who's in charge of X, Y, or Z. You still have to be sensitive to these things and accommodate the divergent groups and interests and faiths as best you can.
It's not safe then to say, even during Christmas time, that that the U.S. is the phrase that's used, a Judeo-Christian country. I'm making an editorial comment here, obviously, that part of the problem I see as we have this discussion is that there's some sense on a large scale that we are in a Judeo-Christian society. That is to say that when in Rome, do as the Romans do. We're celebrating Christmas, celebrate Christmas. Or that's the one side of it. The second side of it is we are not in that kind of society. We're in a society that is as multi-layered and multi-ethnic as they come, and somehow we've got to learn, even during Christmas time, to be sensitive to that. Do either one of you want to speak to that?
Well, we have to be sensitive to other cultures. And the problem that we get into is when we start talking about recognizing holidays. And I think Martin Luther King was a great man. And I recognize that on his birthday. But when we get into the American culture, we have many groups. And I would grant again that not many that go back as far as the black Afro-American. But when you talk about the Asians, and then you talk about our Jewish brother over here, and you begin to talk about all these groups, someplace or somehow or other we have to come to some consensus, because we can't recognize the stopping of everything, you know. And so what is that going to lead to? That we don't celebrate Christmas anymore? Well, I'm not going to give you that. But, you know, that's not an invalid observation.
Well, I guess I'm taking Rick's part here. I guess one of the ways that, as a Christian, since I am a Christian, to look at this would be to say, well, other people don't get to not go to work or whatever, doing a major holiday. It is still a very significant holiday, holy day for me as a Christian. I am still going to celebrate whether the government, whether the institutions acknowledge it or not. and I understand you to be saying crazy, and I don't know that you're saying this, so you can tell me, that part of the issue for you is that there should be some institutional recognition beyond.
It's not just part of me. All of me is saying it. I'm saying it openly and clearly. People should celebrate Christmas who believe in Christ, because Christ, Jesus, made a significant contribution. I would be hard-pressed to find anybody who can find anyone who's made a greater contribution based on what we know about Jesus. I am not anti-Christian. I think Jesus is beautiful. I think that African Americans have made a significant contribution, and the word I've emphasized is contribution. If we're going to have a limited number of holidays in this country that we can celebrate collectively, then look at the value of them. Why pit Martin Luther King holiday against Confederate Flag Day? I mean, wake up and smell somebody's coffee.
Okay.
I lost it.
Go ahead. Well, did you want to say something?
Well, I lost the thought.
Okay.
No, not to that. But maybe the best thing that can happen to Christmas is if we stop letting school out for the whole Christmas holidays. And maybe it would bring people back to an awareness, and those who Christmas, and I probably have the whole Christian community down my nose, but I don't care.
I can hear my own children.
Yeah,
What?
yeah. But maybe not have it as that, and people who want to celebrate have to make some sacrifice to celebrate Christmas, like he has to make a sacrifice, and I think they'll excuse an absence from school for you on Rosh Hashanah, but it's still a sacrifice because his daughter's going to miss schoolwork on that day.
Right.
And maybe that might make us, the Christian side of the community, wake up and recognize that there is some value there.
Well, I guess adding my own comment to that, I could see the value of that in the sense that we are not forced to understand what we're doing. When you do Kwanzaa, from what I heard you say, you are doing a very specific act. When I do Christmas, I mean, basically what I'm doing is, from the secular side, is throwing up a tree and passing out gifts and eating turkey, primarily eating turkey.
When I do Kwanzaa, it's like doing Hanukkah. We have symbols that we use, and we have a deliberate
I'm going to have
program.
to cut you off. We're running out of time. I told y'all 30 minutes would go fast. As we're ending today's discussion, I really do want to thank Rick Goldberg, Kwesi Evans, and Bruce Murray for your participation in this discussion. I can foresee another discussion on Martin Luther King Day. On behalf of Austin Faith Dialogue, I'm Valerie Bridgman Davis, thanking you for watching and inviting you to join us next week at this same time.